Hey YouTube, Denise here from Dueling Bunnies, and I'm coming at you with a segment that I did with my Gravekeepers when I ran them. And it's let's talk about blank, and this is actually going to be let's talk about Inzektors. We're going to talk about everything, the good, the bad, the pros, the cons, what you should be running, what you shouldn't be running, what you should consider running and investing in. So we're going to probably make this a three-part segment. I have a lot to talk about. I've been running this deck as my main deck for, I want to say, about a month now. It's almost been a month. It's going to be a month next week. So I've been running this deck for about a month as my main deck. I dropped Dark Worlds just to see how this would do. I still play my Dark Worlds once in a while, just for fun. It's like my secondary deck, my fun deck. But this is my main deck. This is what I do heavy competition with. So I want to talk about it. I made some changes. If you haven't seen my last deck profile, I made some changes. We have the basic structure. We're going to talk about usually the generic structures of Inzektor decks and why I run the certain cards that I run. The 3 Dragonflies, the 3 Centipedes, and the 3 Hornets, and the Giga Mantis are just the heart of the deck. This is the engine that gets the field destruction going. I run the tour guide engine with the Sangin and Tour Bus. A lot of people like the Armageddon Knight approach with the Mystic Tomatoes as well. That's a good way to go about it if you are on a budget build. Very good, honestly. Sometimes I even think that it's better than the tour guide engine. Sometimes the tour guide engine just doesn't work as well. Not only that, sometimes it gets really easily veilered and you're stuck with just an 1,000 attack monster on the field. It really doesn't do much for you. So, when you are running those Armageddon builds with the Mystic Tomatoes, sometimes you even do better than with people that run tour guides. So that's something to consider. The reason why I do run it though is because I'm a very aggressive player. I like all my decks to be aggro. When you look at my Dark World deck profile, you see that I have almost very little discard. And the ones that I have is just to get Graphon on the field and beat you down. I'm a beat down player. I like killing you as fast as possible. That's the object of all of my decks. That's the goal that I reach for with most of my decks. And I also I care a lot about speed and control. So aggressive deck with speed and control. And I feel like Tour Guide gives me that speed that I was missing in the deck. And it really just makes everything a lot faster. I used to be running 2 Thunder Kings in place of Maxis. I did not have Maxis, and I also said in my video prior, and a lot of people like this quote, that I do well for myself, but I'm not an idiot. I also mentioned, though, that if someone wanted to trade me a Maxi cheaper, that I would, and I got this Maxi practically for free. I think that the guy just valued it at 20 bucks for me, when we all know that this card is a lot more expensive than that. So he just took a lot of like my Lightsworn stuff because he wanted to build a Lightsworn deck. He already had a ton of Maxis and he just wanted to get rid of them. So he went ahead and gave this to me for $20 worth in cards, which he didn't even take $20 worth in cards. He's like, you know what? I know this is not what I value it at, but just have it. And he even gave me a Zen Mighty for free. Just really good people out there. And because of that Zen Mighty, we sold it immediately. And made a profit enough to buy me a second Maxi that's coming on eBay. None of it actually came from my pocket. I got that card for free, and we had some eBay funds just sitting there in the PayPal, and I got myself the Maxi. 2 Veilers, the hand traps, the 2 Maxis and the 2 Veilers. Another thing with this deck, Inzektors, something to keep in mind, it does have a lot of drawing inconsistencies sometimes. Even with the Mystic Tomatoes and Armageddon Knight builds, just the consistency of the deck sometimes tends to get wonky. Even later game, this deck tends to lose fuel during the late games. And beginning of matches, this deck is extremely fast, has a lot of energy, a lot of power to it. But mid to late game, sometimes you start losing the energy. The deck starts losing the energy, starts losing its appeal in the drawing engine, in the drawing realm. So Maxis really help ease that. You draw into your power cards as fast as possible, chaining to the special summoning, which is very, very big, this format, special summoning. So you draw a lot of cards, you draw your power cards, you draw your engine, and the Effect Veiler just kind of stops those cards. Obviously, Effect Veiler not so good against Dino Rabbit, which is probably the worst matchup that this deck has. So definitely the Effect Veilers do come out and I will be showing you a extra deck, hopefully in this video, if not in part 2. Boss monsters, I run 3, Dark Armed, Gores, and BLS. Sometimes the Dark Armed comes out inciting, not only because sometimes I just find myself with my opponent that I feel like I need to go through my deck a lot quicker, which means a lot more darks in the grave than he allows. So when I see that my opponent is really just making me use up my resources quicker, I tend to side out Dark Armed and put something else in just to help me slow down my opponent a little bit more. Gores is amazing. I do not main Fiendish Chain in this deck, only because I felt like Gores was of utmost importance in this deck, because your guys are kind of small. You have an 1000 Dragonfly, 1600 Centipede, and a 500 attack monster. Alright, so you have very small monsters, and that's the hard part of the deck. The Giga Mantis does get you some beef to one of these guys, and the Torgates as well, by helping you bring out Exceeds that I will show you in a minute. But even then, sometimes, you just don't have that field set up. They stop the Dragonfly play, they stop the Centipede play, and you're stuck with a little tiny dude just sitting there. Gores definitely helps. Swarming the field is very fast this format, even with 2 Tarantulas. I mean, it's just incredible how fast these decks are this format. It's very hard to keep up. Gores just kind of helps to tell your opponent, no, hey, you know what, I have an answer. Be careful, fear what's in my hand. Especially with the Maxis, they really have to be cautious about giving you cards, because when this comes into hand, 9 times out of 10, oof, tongue twister, you're going to drop it and it's going to hurt them. BLS. Now, there's a lot of scrutiny with this in running Inzektors, because you do only usually run 2 light targets. I used to be running 4, but BLS is still very easy to bring out in this deck. You will see the extra deck and you'll see why that is what it is. The extra deck has a lot of lights in there that the extra and side deck have lights that could really benefit you into bringing out BLS. The 3, I took out a DD Crow. In my last deck profiles, I had teched a DD Crow into this deck, and the DD Crow is amazing, simply amazing. I loved it, but I just was having an issue with the deck and the drawing consistency of it. The drawing just sucked ass. I could not get anything that I wanted to get, and I was drawing into cards that were just not benefiting me in that point and state of the game. Like I said, this deck does lose a lot of its fuel mid to late game, and the Potted Dualities really help that. Now, a lot of people might be wondering, well, why 3? You do special summon a lot, and yes, you do. But like I said, and I always say this, Potted Duality, never fear to run it when you run a heavy special summon deck. Don't fear to run it, because, like I said earlier, you can always save it for a rainy day. Sometimes you're just going to draw into that horrible card. Activate the Potted Duality. You never know. Especially when you go into the Thunder Kings, when you side, especially then, you can normal summon the Thunder King, and that's a great setup. So, I would much rather draw into a Centipede when I activate Potted Duality. Get that Centipede to hand and do something with that, because I could just search the Giga Mantis from my hand, equipped it, and have a 24 beater. So, things like that, Potted Duality does not hurt. You don't need to activate Potted Duality. You don't have to. I know this deck special summons a lot, but you don't have to activate it. Allure of Darkness, just that extra draw power. So we have 1, 2, 5, 6 cards that help in the drawing consistency, and this has made this deck so much better. So much better. The triple MSTs, something that I feel is essential this format now. The 3 MSTs definitely help get those pesky Fiendish Chains out of the main, out of the board. The Shadow Imprisoning Mirrors that they will cite against you, it's key to have those off the field, as well as the Macrocosmos. Dimensional Fissure doesn't hurt us as much as Macrocosmos does, so getting those pesky cards off the field, the Bottomlesses, the Warnings, and things of that nature to get your plays off is essential. 3 MSTs in the heavy does that for you. Don't do any less than that. Honestly, I feel like this is very essential in this format. Evils as well, when they activate that Evil Force, you know it's going down when that Nojasho's on the field and they activate Evil Force. Be prepared for madness. You want to destroy that Evil Force as fast as possible before they go ahead and activate. There's a lot of things. Wind-up factories, you want to destroy those. Those are just black roll-ins for wind-ups, and that's just not a good thing. Not a good thing. 3 MSTs, heavy is wonderful. The Foolish Burial, honestly, I felt really weird with this card. I never really truly liked it too much, and I was having my ifs about Foolish. But with the new addition of Torbus into the deck, it's really more live now. When you have enough Hornets in the graveyard, sometimes you really draw to that Foolish a little too late, and it's not really advisable to Foolish another Hornet. There's no point when you already have two in the grave. So I like a really good and live play with Foolish Torbus and bring a Inzektor monster from the graveyard to your deck. Usually it's going to be a Centipede or a Dragonfly, and it's honestly a great play, so your Foolish is never truly dead. Also, when you have that Dark Armed in hand, and you really need to get that 28 beater out because you know that that's your only out, and you have that Foolish in hand, go ahead and Foolish that last dark target you need. There's just a lot of ways that Foolish is alive in this deck, so definitely run it. I see, believe it or not, I see a lot of Inzektor players not running Foolish Burial. Why, I don't know. It's very, very important, especially with Dark Arms, especially with, if you run Torbus, it's live, and Hornets as well. You want to get those in the grave. Pot of Avarice, like I said, the one con that I have with this deck is that it does lose its energy and speed mid to late game. It just loses its gas and runs out of gas, and you really desperately need to refuel. Pot of Avarice is that gas tank for you. It really just gets your Inzektors going again, make sure that Inzektor engine goes back, and you know, there's just a lot that you can do with Pot of Avarice. Monster Reborn is just a generic staple. Book of Moon and Dark Hole, a lot of scrutiny again with Book of Moon. A lot of people don't like Book, and I can understand why. But again, one of the worst matchups that Inzektors have, especially, and I want you guys to listen to me very carefully, especially those of you that are thinking about running Inzektors competitively with or without tour guides. You can be competitive with or without tour guides. So like I'm saying, for those that are thinking about running Inzektors, one of the worst matchups you will have, and don't cry about it because they will happen to you, is Dino Rabbits and anything that can go into Dolkas and Lagias, which will be evils as well. So Book of Moon really just helps get the pesky Dolka face down, the pesky Thunder King. Also just helps stop them from actually going into a Lagia or a Dolka. They could go Rescue Rabbit, summon the two Kabazuls or Sabersaurus, book one of them, and they can't exceed that way. There's just a lot to direct Waiba. That's very important not to let it go off, and it usually will with your Inzektors. They have no fear with attacking with Guaiba because all of your guys are very small. Unless you're into an Exceed with the Thunder King, with the Tour guys, if you have gone into an Exceed or if you've gone into an Exceed with a Centipede and a Dragonfly, other than that, they really have no fear with attacking with Guaiba. So, booking that Guaiba to not let it get its effect off and let them go into a Dolka or a Lagia is very essential. Book of Moon is really good. I highly recommend it if you're one of those players that just are kind of iffy about Book of Moon. No fear, go for it. Dark Hole, again, this deck loses its gas mid to late. And sometimes you're just in one of those, you're on the losing end of the field advantage, and you really just want to kind of just refresh, start all over. Dark Hole's the best way to go. The traps are very minimal. I recommend not running too many traps with this deck because you really just want to focus on killing your opponent as fast as possible, swarming as fast as possible, and getting what you need to get done. So traps, the basic generic Solemn Brigade with the Judgment and the 2 warnings, very important in the Rabbit matchup, very important in the wind-up matchup, just negate, and then go off that way and beat them. Call of the Haunted, a lot of people did not like this card in my deck when I made my last video, and I can understand why. Call of the Haunted really is just not as good, but what I like to do is, when they MST Call of the Haunted, I chain it, get the Sangan, things like that. There's just a lot that you can do, especially with Sangan. You go target into Sangan very quickly. That Sangan's going to go to the grave. When you really just are not drawing into an Inzektor, call the Sangan. Of course, it's going to go into attack, but it's not that bad. And you do get an Inzektor to hand, which is awesome. The Compulse, I changed it. I used to have a Mirror Force in there, and I went ahead and took it out for a Compulse, and I think it's one of the best decisions I've made. Compulse just honestly is very live this format. I like chainability, so I think I made the best decision going with the Compulse instead of the Mirror. It really helped me in locals get those pesky Zenmains, Dolkas, the acid golems, things like that out of the field. Torrential, just again, if you're on the losing side of the duel, Torrential just helps win games. You got to refresh the field and try to get on the advantage side again, get on the winning side again. This deck is 41 cards, and honestly, one of the most consistent decks I've ever built in my life. This deck has a lot of speed, and if you're really thinking about running Inzektors, I highly recommend that you do. It's one of the cheaper top tier decks to build because again, a lot of the cards are common and rare. They're really the only the three cards that are going to cost you are the Hornets. Giga Mantis is not so much. It's not that big of a deal. Now, if you're going into the tour guide engine, that's where the expensive part of the deck can come in, as well as the Max Cs. You can do without Max C. You can go with the 2 Thunder Kings. I mean, Thunder Kings are common right now. And they're very easy to pull in the Raw Yellow Mega Pack. So, like I said, something to consider. I was running 2 Thunder Kings instead of 2 Maxis, and it worked really well. When I did go to locals, I had gotten this Maxi for free practically before the tournament started. So I had 1 Maxi and 1 Thunder King, and that's how I won all my matches and only lost to Dinos and Evols and tied with Dragons. So that's that. This deck, again, guys, very good. Something I would highly recommend to duelists trying to get a little bit more competitive in the meta now. Now, in my next video, I'm going to talk about, I didn't have time to really go into this side and extra deck. In this video, I wanted to more talk about what you should consider in your main deck. And some pros of the deck, some cons of the deck. So yes, this is part 1. Part 2 will be, hopefully I can get this done, the part 2 done soon. So yeah, this is part 1. Let me know if you run a different build of Inzektors. Let me know what you like to run in your Inzektor build. Do you run tour guides? Do you not run tour guides? Do you like the Armageddon Knight builds with the Mystic Tomatoes? Why? Yes. If you do, why? If you don't, why? Let me know what you tech in your Inzektor builds. What are your traps lineups? Just let me know. If you were to run Inzektors, what would you put? If you're considering Inzektors, if you have any questions about Inzektors, guys, I'm an open book. I can go ahead and answer those questions for you in video. I can go ahead and do a question and answer video just for you guys after the segment is done. So if you have any questions, any concerns, if you want to ask me, hey, what do you think about running this in Inzektors? Or, could you check out my Inzektor build? Things like that, I could more than likely do that for you. Just leave a comment down below, or you can PM me. Either way, if you don't want your comment to be public, I can go ahead, you can just PM me. So make sure you subscribe up there, leave a comment down there, hit the like button down over here. And this has been Denise from Dueling Bunnies with part 1 of Let's Talk About Inzektors. Hope you enjoyed it. Part 2 will be coming very soon. Thanks. Bye.